Principle 9 of 11 against the Chinese Marxist model is that only the rule of law can deliver wealth and stability to a nation's citizens. The rule of man of dictatorship cannot. China's constitution doesn't mean anything. It's merely taking the jewelry of democracies and putting it on a dictatorship. A citizen's life may be ended on the whim of the government. Citizens can be disappeared, such as they did to Jack Ma of the Ant Group. For many, many months, he just disappeared. The conviction rate for criminal cases is over 99.7%. It's similar to the Soviet Union. Once a case has begun, it would be a waste of state resources to not find the citizen guilty. Or they wait for the oracle at the other end of the telephone line in the judge's chambers, who instructs the judge on the conviction and the sentence. The oracle is never wrong. In the Soviet Union in 1961, there's an example of a publication of a prosecutor's office, the Sotsialisticheskaya Zakonnost, December 27, 1961, on pages 73 to 74. They recounted the questioning, the reactions of the public, the prosecutor's speech, the sentence of death passed. The only problem was the trial had been postponed. This is recounted in Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago, Volume 3 at page 523. The only problem was that the report on the trial came out before the trial actually happened, and they forgot to tell the author of the piece. This journalist got 1 year of forced labor as a penalty. If China had had the rule of law and its citizens had the right to their own life and their own property decades ago, China would be so much further ahead today economically, and they would have a much larger middle class. Instead, they have the millionaires and billionaires of the Chinese Politburo, of which Supreme Leader Xi Jinping is a member. These millionaires and billionaires are tied to the state-owned enterprises, real estate, technology. Unfortunately, China will not escape the middle-income trap, where China had gone from low-income nation to a middle-income nation. But unlike South Korea and Taiwan, it will not go to a high-income nation. Their growth has stagnated from 10% to 8% to 6% to 5% to 4%. Labor costs are increasing. Not that you should think that the CPC is concerned about the lagging economy, so long as their control remains. That is the penultimate goal. And to maintain the dictatorship of the CPC, they spend more to monitor and control their own citizens than they do on defense. They censor the internet and social media. They give social scores to citizens to give better housing or worse housing, or better jobs or worse jobs. They have so-called smart cities that monitor everything. They fear their own citizens than they do the democracies of the West. Yes, the United States went through the Civil War, 1861 to 1865. We were inventing rule of man institutions, elections, expanding voting rights, political parties, conventions, freedom of speech, press, assembly, and religion. Slave power, which had promoted, protected, and advocated slavery, was undermining America's institutions, their churches, and ultimately they were sore losers and withdrew from the Union when they lost a national election. Now you move ahead 100 years, and the misery of Mao's Marxist system was clearly apparent. During Mao's rule, you had the Great Leap Forward from 1958 to 1962. At that time, they followed a 5-year plan, of course based on science, of forced agricultural collectivization and rural industrialization. 30 to 45 million people died through starvation, execution, torture, forced labor, suicide. It was the largest single non-wartime campaign of mass killing in human history. This was followed by the Great Cultural Revolution of 1966 to 1976. Mao and other communists competed for dominance of the CPC, complete with tank battles between competing parties, armed clashes. There were struggle sessions where the citizen was made to stand in front of other citizens, could be in a town square, could be in a school auditorium, could be at a stadium. They were vilified as bad types, such as landlords, rich farmers, counter-revolutionaries, right-wingers, bad influencers. Those found guilty, if they're lucky, they left for their life. Some were killed on stage with farm implements. The purpose of this struggle session was to intimidate the other citizens that they would not think to raise a hand to the Communist Party of China. And that's only about 60 years ago. A rule of law country has checks and balances. And it's not necessarily what's on paper in the Constitution that matters. It's that the citizen must respect the Constitution and believe in it. Until China becomes a rule of law nation with competing political parties and political rights to the citizen, it will continue to be a potential powder keg over which the CPC rules and hopes to control in perpetuity. This has naturally inhibited the economics of the Chinese people, has inhibited their rights of free speech, press, assembly, and religion. Everything must be done to the glory of the party and the state. It is so petrified of its own people that mere photographs of the goddess of democracy, which is a 30-foot tall papier-mâché statue built in Tiananmen Square in 1989, which was a demonstration by Chinese citizens and students against the CPC, which was put down by the Chinese military with tanks and rifles. And before daybreak on June 4, 1989, this papier-mâché statue had been removed. You cannot see that image in China. It is forbidden. China needs the rule of law to reward her people for their many talents and to regain China's position as an advanced civilization versus the base dictatorship that it is. You can read about the 9th principle in my book, China, Demise of a Civilization, the 11 Principles of History and Economics Against the Chinese Marxist Model. Thank you.